Bart Keeler. What's up, dude? Can you hear me?
I can.
There we go. I had all this set up, and it's just like I'm getting all the positivity, and you just kind of stare at me. I'm like, wait a second, what's wrong with my setup? What have I screwed up today?
Nope, you're good, John. It was me who messed up.
No. What's the mug this morning, by the way?
Drink coffee, do good.
Okay. I kind of
Kickoff Coffee sponsor me.
There you go. I kind of stumbled into a separate topic that I did not initially have on the board.
Oh, okay. Great.
And it was...
Is it why Arthur Smith should have been fired at 11:59 instead of 12:02? Or
Well, I mean, we can talk some American football down here if you want.
No, we don't need to.
I mean, it was the beginning of Black Monday. Technically, I mean, everybody thought Black Monday was going to be, and Ron Rivera is apparently also on that list.
Yeah.
But by the way, since you brought it up before we get into other things, the whole thing with the fake kneel down and rushing touchdown at the end of the game, right now it appears that the decision in New Orleans is going to be one of two things. Yes, Jameis Winston signed a 1-year deal. Is Dennis Allen going to stay, or is Jameis Winston going to stay? That's the question now, because it apparently the lunatics, the inmates are running the asylum.
Yeah.
If you have a team decision where Dennis Allen said take a knee, Jameis Winston admits after the game in the post-game scrum that it was a team decision that they wanted to get one of their buddies a touchdown, either Jimmy Graham or the running back, and it ends up being the running back. So you fake a knee, you fake victory formation, hand the ball off, and go in and score.
Yep.
At that point, I'm starting to fight. Well, I'm starting to fight, dude.
Yeah, like that's the one thing that I think Arthur Smith is legitimately aggrieved about, is because it wasn't that they scored a touchdown.
No.
It's the fake kneel down, then go. Because we all understand trying to get a player a touchdown or whatever at the end of the game because, performance incentives, like, we all understand that those happen. But that was it again points to Jameis Winston just not really getting it ever. The dude is not a professional quarterback.
Sorry. And I'm the Florida State alum on this show.
I know. It's Jameis Winston is lucky he's still employed, because I don't understand why he is, to be quite honest. That was disappointing to hear.
Oh.
So we can move on to actual football things, though.
Sure,
real football.
But no, look, if you want to get your buddy a touchdown, just line up normal. Line up in a T formation, line up power eye, hand the ball off, and sit there and figure it out.
And it's an easy explanation to Arthur Smith, like, hey man, like, we wanted to get this dude a touchdown for performance incentives, and Arthur probably would have been like, oh yeah, totally, I understand. But the fake kneel down is what I think people really, got.
Oh my God, I absolutely would have been just swinging at people at that point.
Yeah.
Did you see? And it was something that we talked about here in the tail end of hour number 1, was that the PSRA and Pro and a collective bargaining agreement is about a week away from not existing. Mm-hmm. And the idea that you could have some, how do we phrase this? Atypical individuals in this 5-week period, leading up to the MLS season. I mean, there's some serious ish that could be going on here if they don't come up with a resolution. And apparently, by all indications, they are as far apart can be. Well,
the reporting was one a 90% pay increase, and then Pro is like, we'll give you 3.
Yeah, it's like the rank and file. Let me see if I can find the numbers. Yeah. In December, sources, and once again, quoting our friends at The Athletic, in December, sources say Pro offered an overall 3% pay increase to its referees. Yes. PSRA had demanded an increase of up to 90%
Yep.
With the largest of the increases reserved for its lowest paid officials like ARs and fourths. Earlier last week, Pro increased its offer marginally, in quotation marks, said one source, offering an overall raise of 4 to 5%, according to another source briefed on the talks. If the refs voted to strike, or if Pro locked them out, MLS would be forced to use replacement referees in preseason, potentially when you get your kickoff February 21st. Obviously, you get an agreement, then this goes by the wayside. Base salary, according to the previous CBA, probationary center referees, refs with less than 2 years of service, make a base salary of $50,647 for their work, supplemented by a match fee. More experienced refs make anywhere from $95 to $108. I mean, ARs get $1,350 a game. For someone who may not necessarily, it's like, oh, yeah, I want to try to make sure that we don't take this situation for granted, because you could be in some serious ish if this doesn't get sorted out.
So I think I will say that this won't be as big of an issue as I think some people are going to make it to be.
Okay.
Because the preseason stuff is quite honestly irrelevant. Now, obviously, referees want that preseason to also get in shape, get in match focus, all those types of things that players also want to use it for, and coaches want to use it for. Also, with especially this season, we have some very big changes to how we administer games. So that's going to be something that during the preseason referees will probably want to work out. But at the end of the day, I don't think that having your top level pro referees in preseason is not going to be, if you don't have them there, it won't be catastrophic. That said, based on the reporting, it doesn't seem like they're particularly close. And I don't know if 5 weeks is going to be something that this is going to magically be, resolved. So I'm not sure. Labor negotiations are always weird. Because as much as you want to side on or go on the side of the labor, you do have to look at this and go, you're making $100,000 a year and you're complaining about what's that pay increase that you're actually looking for? What I would like to know, and I haven't seen from the reporting, is the pay increase from the annual salary, because those salaries sound pretty nice.
Yeah.
Or is it to the game officials pay, right? So you mentioned that, maybe starting out, you get 50,000 as a center official, and then you get about $1,500 a game.
Yeah.
1,300 a game, I think.
Yeah. 1,350.
Now, that said, the assistant referees, the new assistant referees, they do seem to be getting shafted. And so if we're trying to get pay increases that are more toward the bottom rung, then that makes a whole lot of sense. And that's something that pro and MLS official or MLS owners do need to kind of pony up a little bit for, in my opinion.
Let me ask you this. When do you have your off season? When are you not reffing games? Do you have any downtime?
Right now.
Okay.
Right now. Mainly because even the adult leagues are referee shoutouts, Station Soccer, we take that break during Christmas to New Year's, right? Mainly because at the adult league, we're refereeing adults and we're all off work anyway, so we're done. But even the summer, like I'm refereeing, be an adult league, but we have a lot of youth games going on because, and I support this. I support kids getting a break, but I also support clubs offering centralized league and training opportunities for the kids. So yeah, right now is my break. I take in the summer we have a downtime, but it's not a full break.
When you come out of your full break, how long does it take you to get back into the swing of things and feel safe with your own rhythm now that you hop back in?
So that's one of the things that, again, I think parents need to understand with younger referees, with referees at their youth clubs, is these preseason tournaments are preseason for referees as well. Because while I'm saying that we're, kind of in a break, I'm not refereeing as fully as I normally would. The games, like when I referee in the summer, most of the games that we referee, we have rules, and then those always get abridged because, it might be, oh, we're playing a full 40 minutes because it's this age group. And then I get there and the coach is like, yeah, we're playing 30 minutes and we're going to do 3 water breaks because, it's 95 degrees outside. Which we're all in favor of because it's summer. This doesn't really matter. No one's going to any sort of national championship. This is just for kids to play soccer. Let's keep them safe. Those preseason tournaments, and some referees referee one. I'm one of those who referees multiples because I like the money. Those are our times to get accustomed to new law changes. So obviously we have new laws go into effect over the summer break. Usually we come back. And so that first tournament in August is new laws of the game. And that's, again, what we're talking about with MLS is a lot of times you don't have massive changes, but you just have different ways you have to read and interpret the game. So with MLS this time around, you have a whole lot of new administrative kind of rules, is the way I would put them. It takes a little bit of time for you to get that into your head. It truly does. And then it obviously takes time for you to get into that match fitness, because while you may be training, running after a 16-year-old who's, after a long ball has been kicked from the center back to the striker, I don't do that on a daily basis. That does take a little bit of time for me to get used to.
What?
Yeah.
So how long does it take to get you back to full song where you're comfortable with your pacing?
Well, for me, it does come down. It takes me about a tournament, right? Because by the end of the tournament, I feel like I'm back into it. But I've also been doing this I'm 34. I've been doing this since I was 15. So you do the math, almost 20 full years of refereeing at this point. For me, I get back into it a little bit easier. I also, again, at my more experienced level, understand how to be a little bit more conscious of how I use my energy. And this is actually something funny that happened with me earlier last season. Is I was refereeing a tournament, and we had a lot of new upper level referees coming to assess us to try to be mentors and stuff, because that's part of their training. And one of their comments was like, oh, you need to run a little bit more. And I was like, well, this is my first game of 7 this weekend. So what we're not going to do is be going 100%. I know what that 85 to 90% looks like. That personally, I can manage a game personally very well, but I'm not going to give you 100% on my first day on a Saturday at 8 a.m. when I have 7 more games that weekend. That's just not going to happen,
No.
No. And that is the biggest difference between what I'm doing and what we're seeing at collegiate and above, right? Even at the high school, you're doing multiple games. When you start working college, you're doing one game. You might be doing multiple games in a week, but you're doing one game and an assignment, right? So you have to give 100%. You have to be fully locked in. Anywhere below that, you have to understand how to kind of conserve your energy so that you're not winded by the end of what you're doing. Yeah.
So Dell wants to know, what level do you referee?
So I do anything from the U9 Academy up until U19, ECNL, NPL, all those elite leagues. Elite being in quote marks.
Yes.
I come just short of doing MLS Academy, but that's just because I'm not personally in that pool of referees. But I do similar level stuff.
Would you? So then, what would it take for you, other than the time investment, to go and be a part of that next level and get into the collegiate chain and do D3, D2s or next pro? What would be those next steps for you if you wanted to go that way?
So it is a lot of time. I have met all the time and stuff requirements that I could, but it's also a lot of money, right? And so it's not just time on the field, it's time off the field. It's money that you have to invest because you have to go through the certification process. You're paying to literally go to these clinics. And while that stuff may be a tax write-off, you're still paying for it.
That is true.
So it does take a lot of time and money to go up the ranks. Now, as you continue to go up, there's some help, if you will. And I'm not quite sure what it means for the professional level, but I think it's a little less. There's a lot of money involved, but there's, I think, more support to get you there because they obviously want good referees at the highest level. But it does take money. And then after that, because the pool narrows so much. They're a lot more centralized, and you just basically say, hey, I want to do this. This is how it works for high school anyway. They send out the email and say, hey, any referees want to do that? And you say, yeah, I want to do it. And at that point, you're all in one big pool for the most part.
Okay.
And so same with collegiate. They may have different ones for regions, I think, but it's still a very centralized pool. You're not like at my level, I have to go to specific clubs and be like, oh, okay, well, SSA is this a signer and UFA is this a signer and Inter Atlanta is this. It's not how it works as we go up. And that's what Pro was doing as well. It's a centralized assessment and assigning organization.
And Dell also, with a follow up, just wants to know if do you just ref here in the Atlanta area?
Oh yeah, I can go elsewhere. Like for example, Disney is one of the ones that usually the Disney Showcase usually is asking for referees.
There you go.
Because they just have a lot of people or a lot of teams playing because it's a big tournament. But yeah, the other problem here is you have to be registered in each state. Florida, the Disney tournaments are a lot of those one-offs. They're not as they don't care as much because really all it is just making sure you can get paid. But yeah, you can referee just about anywhere. But a lot of states you do have to get registered in that state. It can be as simple as just saying, "Here's my name and my certification number."
Yeah, it's like being a lawyer. It's like you pass the bar in Georgia, and
you pass the bar in Georgia. I think you're certified in like 35 of the 50 states, and I think one of those is like Louisiana because they still use French law or something.
Yes, there you go. Camp Cupcake, I wanted to discuss with you as well.
I do want to answer one question though, John, about
go for it.
Reference.
Yeah.
So this is where I'm not quite sure how this is going to work because Pro is one thing, and then there's Pro 2, which is kind of the developmental path.
Right.
They are under a CBA still. So I think the solution is a lot of these Pro 2 officials, which you'll see in League 1, League 2, sometimes Championship, sometimes NWSL. Right. You'll see those referees taking charge of the matches for MLS preseason and possibly, maybe the first month of MLS season. So I don't know if that's for sure because they are technically separate CBAs because Pro 2 is not MLS level, NWSL Championship level. Pro 2 is to be that developmental group, but they are separate, weirdly enough.
Yeah. Well, things that sound the same are separate in the sport. Who knew when it came to governing bodies and organizations?
Yeah. And I don't know if they're part of PSRA or not. PSRA. I haven't been able to determine that because PSRA definitely mentions MLS, definitely mentions NWSL, definitely mentions USL Championship. I think it mentions League 1 as well. But again, Pro and Pro 2 are different. So Pro 2 is still under a CBA.
Yes. Camp Cupcake, I wanted to discuss this with you because we were kind of filibustering on Friday waiting for a roster announcement.
And it happened live during the press conference
of course,
that I got to attend, which was fun.
And so literally we were like, all right, so is it coming? Is it coming? Is it coming? Yeah. And so of course it didn't. And it was, we tried to filibuster as best we could. But with this group, there are a lot of zeros attached to it. 17 newcomers in this group. And there's some really interesting names that are attached, including Cade Cowell, who's being recruited at the moment, it seems, by teams in Liga MX. But you've got some really young guys in here. And when you looked at this release, what stuck out to you?
Well, I think what stuck out to me is there's a lot of names that even kind of the hardcore fans and people who would project rosters would not have included. And this is where Camp Cupcake is a little weird because, yes, in theory, there's everyone's available who plays in MLS. They're not playing right now. But for example, and I'm sure we'll talk about him, about in the snubs, but there are some clubs that maybe have a little bit more extended and hard preseasons. Looking at one in South Florida that maybe didn't release or want a player to go, and that player also maybe have made that business decision of, no, I need to be a part of my club for preseason. And this applies to some of the, for example, Brandon Vasquez, right? Probably if he's staying in MLS, he truly gets to stay. I know Greg addressed this during his press conference, saying that they wanted to look at other people, but I'm not sure why you need to look at Brian White when you have Brandon Vasquez. I don't understand why Brian White is still considered for the national team. We can talk about that more, but like, this is just a weird space. So that roster tends to be a little interesting as it is, but there's still some names on there that I just don't understand why they're here. They don't fit into the U23 group. I don't see them at all being a part of the senior national team going forward. Even if you say, oh, they might have a good camp, I don't need them. They're not good enough to start even scratching the depth chart. And I say that because they're all 24 and older. At this point, we don't need to take a flyer to say, oh, are you good enough? Because you had maybe one decent season in MLS, especially looking at some of the center backs. It just is what it is.
All right. So then line them up and knock them down. What were the ones where you're sitting there and you're going, bruh, what was the decision here?
I mentioned Brian White. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I don't understand Brian White. I understand he had a good season last year with Vancouver. I'm not knocking that. I just don't see where he fits into the striker depth chart. You've got, and this is where we can talk about Brooks Lennon, but I don't know where Brian White fits in. You've got Balogun. You've got Pepe. Sargent's playing again. Haji Wright. Daryl DK just scored over the weekend. And now you're bringing in a guy like Vasquez, or you brought in a guy like Vasquez. You still have Ferreira out there. Where does Brian White fit in? Especially when you're also looking at a guy like Duncan McGuire, who's in that U23 pool.
Right.
So what's the point? Is it just to get a look at a guy who had a good season in MLS? That's fine. Again, Brian White, throughout his entire career in MLS, has been not at the level of any of our other strikers. I'm sorry. I just don't understand it.
Yeah.
The other one is Shaq Moore. Thanks for playing in the World Cup. You were terrible in the World Cup. I don't need you anymore. Look, shout out to the kid from Powder Springs, but I don't need you to be on this national team anymore. And I know Greg specifically mentioned him as culture and fit and all this kind of, older guy to do that. I don't need you. I'm just glad that DeAndre Yedlin's not here.
Yeah. I mean, you look at this group, then in net, you're looking at Callender, Celentano, and Schulte.
Celentano and Schulte, love that for the U23 Olympic stuff because they are pretty good MLS goalkeepers.
Defenders, Nathan Harriel, DeJuan Jones, Shaq Moore, Ian Murphy, Jackson Reagan, Miles, James Sands, Nkosi Tafari, John Tolkien, Caleb Wiley.
Yeah. A lot of these guys Olympic eligible. And I think, again, should have been, in my opinion, the primary goal of this camp. Obviously, a guy like Miles Robinson, I get he's a USMNT kind of stalwart. He needs to be here to just make sure he's still fresh. Same with DeJuan Jones, right? I think I'm fine with those guys being in here. Jackson Reagan, not Olympic eligible. He's 26. What purpose does he serve here? But a guy like Ian Murphy, young kid, Nathan Harriel, young guy, Olympic eligible, had decent seasons in MLS with teams who did pretty well. Yeah, great to bring them in.
Midfield, Josh Atencio, Aziel Jackson at all caps, Jack McGlynn, Aiden Morris, Sean Zawadski, all 23 and under, and then Timothy Tillman is the sixth midfielder.
Yeah, we've been wanting to see Tillman in a camp for a while. Finally got him in. The rest of them I love because, again, we're looking at the U23 group, trying to see who can actually be a member of that Olympic squad. And also, I think this is a little bit of a tip of the hat of which clubs are going to actually release players for the Olympics or not. And we can talk about that when we talk about a couple of snubs.
Okay. Forwards by Raktarovich, Cowell, Kamungo, Luna, McGuire, and Brian White. I mean, that's some heavy-duty names there, and a lot of them are U23.
Yeah, they sound really good MLS names. They're not international caliber. You know how I know that? Cade Cowell doesn't need to be here. I'm tired of seeing Cade Cowell for the U.S. men's national team. I'm sorry. He is U23 eligible. That's great. Maybe he'll turn the corner soon. Maybe that move to Mexico will help. I just don't see how he's progressed enough as an actual professional starter for 3 years now.
Yeah.
He's still who he is, the kid from New England. I'm not going to try to pronounce that name.
Bajraktarevic.
Bajraktarevic.
Bajraktarevic. Yes.
I haven't practiced it enough. That's a great call up because 18-year-old played a lot for New England as an 18-year-old, considerable minutes. Same with Duncan McGuire, same with Diego Luna. These are guys who legitimately have chances to impact the team, the U23 team at the Olympics this summer. Like legit. Duncan McGuire, Diego Luna especially. Luna's been part of that youth national team setup. These are guys who can really impact the team in the summer. And so getting them into camp is great. Kamungo, unfortunately, it's a great story. Love that for him. I don't really see where he fits into the national team picture. Got to be real honest.
Snubs.
Well, three I want to talk about because I don't know where their club situation, like if their clubs wanted to let them go. The first is Benja Kramaski. And I only say that because Miami's playing a 17-year preseason in 15 different continents. I feel like they're playing on Mars, apparently.
Yes, they are.
So I get why Kramaski isn't here because I think he's like, well, the game is the 20th. I don't want to be, doing that and then have to report. I get it. But from Chicago, who has nothing going for them whatsoever except for these two players, Chris Brady and Brian Gutierrez should be in this camp. So I'm a little disappointed in Chicago for not releasing them. Because they had good years, especially Brady. And I think he's a better, I would rather Brady in here than Calendar. I know Calendar has been in camps before. He doesn't have a cap, so it's not like he knows what it means to play for the national team yet. I would have preferred to see Brady here, honestly. So those are guys that I do wonder what their club situation was going. Another guy who I'm not sure why he wasn't released was Obed Vargas. I know he's kind of toying between Mexico and U.S. This friendly and this camp wouldn't have meant anything. And it's definitely a guy who could be part of the youth national team this summer. So that one was a little bit of an interesting one, why Vargas wasn't released, but then Jackson Reagan did come. Other one, maybe Indiana Vasilev, kid from Savannah area.
Oh, yeah.
And then Jalen Neal, who has been part of camps before. I'm just, I'm not going to say that he must be part of this, but again, a guy at the U23 level who I think could be really helpful this summer. And I'm not sure why Galaxy said no, or if he said no. Again, it's not an official FIFA window. Anyone can say no for any reason. And then that's kind of the reason. Abby, I don't know if they weren't released or they not asked. Greg's not going to tell us those answers. It could be a combination of a lot of things.
All right.
They're not here.
And then last thing I wanted to catch up with you about was Brooks Lennon. I know that you had mentioned Brooks as a part of the conversation and not being named.
A lot of people think Brooks Lennon was snubbed and it's the greatest crime against humanity for some reason. That was this outlash on Twitter. And Niall, I'm going to point at you because you and I went back and forth on Twitter. And I understand that we love Brooks. And I will be the first person to defend Brooks Lennon here in Atlanta because I think he is a much better right back than the guy that we had before that everyone thinks was a right back but wasn't actually right back. He just played right back in like 2 games. Brooks Lennon, though, is 26 years old now.
Sounds about right.
So he doesn't factor into the U23 equation. I don't know where he fits in the right back depth chart, right? You've got Serginho Dest as your first. You've got Joe Scally. You've got Brian Reynolds, who's younger and playing at a higher level. You've got DeJuan Jones, younger, has been preferred for a while, and I think being able to play left and right back is nice. Brooks's versatility of being able to play right back or right wing isn't really I don't think he's exceptional at either when you compare him to the national team. And despite what people want to say about defensive improvements, he's still a defensive liability who's played on a team that's given up 107 goals in 2 seasons. Now that is, I think, that's not a Brooks problem. I also don't attribute it necessarily to Miles. I think that's Gonzalo Pineda not knowing how to set up a team defensively to not give up stupid, easy goals. I think that's also having Mateus Rossetto as a defensive midfielder. But The reality is Brooks hasn't. Sorry, John. I know y'all have to stand him because he's from Brazil, but he's not good. It's not. But at the same time, you look at Miles, you look at Brooks. They're still part of that team. So I can't justify Brooks being a snub when I don't think he's contributed that much to a team that has given up a whole lot of goals. And his really only plus side is his attacking contributions, which are great, but we have players who do that already. And again, where does he fit in the depth chart? Do I think he's ahead of DeAndre Yedlin and Shaq Moore? Personally, yes, but those guys are at best 4th or 5th on the depth chart. So you're telling me that Brooks is 5th on the depth chart at 26? Okay. I'd rather see Nathan Harriel.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. By the way, addendum, the PSRA and Pro 2 did ratify a CBA of their own last year, so you were correct.
That's what I thought that was true, but yeah.
Yes. All right, so what's going on at Soccer for USPod before we head into Prem and Proper?
We are recording tonight about the Camp Cupcake roster, and so hopefully we'll get a episode to you soon. I'll be out of town Thursday through Monday, so we'll see how quickly I can get this edited.
All right. Well, as always, my friend, great to have you on your Mondays at Bartimus Prime 19 at Soccer for USPod. Be safe and stay dry. We'll catch up with you soon, my friend.
You do the same. Enjoy, y'all.